I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Balara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you. Hi everyone, I'm Jason Balara and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Mery Wang. Mery is this, well, first of all, this is a very special episode. We haven't really done anything similar to this, but I should have said Dr. Wang, as she is a veterinarian and soon to be cardiologist heading into her cardiology residency. We'll talk about all of that. But first, I just want to say thanks. Thanks for coming on. I as I said before we started recording, I'm really excited about this. I think that we can do really have a great conversation about like the veterinary community in general and the maybe some of the issues we're facing and all of that. But first, just thank you. Thanks for taking the time out today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm so sorry if you hear like random scrambling. It's my cats fighting in the background. So that's
okay.
Great.
That's okay. That's actually like perfect backdrop for two vets talking on a podcast.
I know, right?
Sounds of animals causing chaos in the background. That's most of our lives.
I know.
Let's just tell people your story, your background, a little bit about your life, and we will definitely get into kind of the road to becoming a veterinarian and then a specialist and all of that. But just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I was actually born in Argentina, Buenos Aires. My dad's like Chinese. He immigrated to Argentina, met my mom there. Then we moved to the States when I was super young. And I have two sisters. One of them stayed in Argentina at the time, so I grew up mainly with my middle sister. And I like moved around a lot throughout my life. So I was mainly in SoCal in the beginning, then I went to Utah for some time, and then in NorCal, and then I came back here. But I went to undergrad at UCLA. I did my vet school at Western University of Health Sciences, and then afterwards I did my rotating internship at VCA West LA. So I've pretty much been in LA my entire life. After I finished my rotating, I was pretty set. Like I was throughout vet school thinking about like, do I want to specialize in surgery or whatever? And then finally during my internship, I was thinking cardio, but I think throughout my internship, or I don't know, sometime in there, I got really, really burnt out. And I was like, you know what, maybe ER is a better route for me right now, because I was also wanting to stay near my family. So in this last year, I did a year of ER work. And then this year I also was, it stayed on my mind, like the cardio route was something that I've always wanted to do. And I didn't want to like end up sometime in my life where I looked back and I regretted just not giving it a shot. Because I've been working so hard towards that. And so, I decided this year to go through the match and finally apply. And then I matched to a cardio residency. So I was like, what? I was so excited. And I will be going to Arizona for that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's congratulations, by the way. I knew that, and I'm super excited for you, and it's well deserved. But
I'm so excited. Yeah. Thank you.
Let's just back up, because I think like you talking about that to me, I exactly understand everything you're saying, but I think most people listening may not understand kind of all of the steps. They think about their veterinarian that they go to on a regular basis, and they they think, oh, that vet gets to play with puppies and kittens all day and that kind of thing. So first, tell people the time frame there. Tell people how much time you have already put into this and what's ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it's a long road. I pretty much wanted to be a vet since I was like in maybe like elementary school to like middle school is when I started working on it. So I started like volunteering. It's been years, but after high school and doing undergrad, which you have to do a bunch of prerequisites for like you have to have pretty much a degree that would be compatible for vet school. So I was like, I got my biology, my bachelor's in biology while I was in UCLA, and that satisfied a lot of the prerequisites necessary to even enter vet school. And you have to have a pretty like good GPA to go to vet school. So like you have to start working early essentially. After undergrad, I mean, I personally took a gap year just to work and make some extra money to have some buffer. But most people just go straight to vet school after that. And then it's 4 years total, which you also like if you're, and I recently made a post about this on Instagram, but if you're thinking about like specializing and stuff, you already have to maintain a pretty competitive GPA. I think like that's what I've been told to even enter a residency. So you have to work really hard. And then, to get into a competitive rotating internship, which is oftentimes what you need to even be considered for a residency, you also need a high GPA. So it's like you're working, like, honestly, I feel like I've been working towards this goal since I was probably like, I don't know, 14 or 15 years old. Not everyone does that. There's also the unconventional route where they like decide in undergrad that they want to be vets, but you already have to have like a foundation of having been working hard to maintain like a good grades and then doing extracurriculars. So after, your rotating internship, which is 1 year, then that's when you apply for a residency, and you only do that if you want to specialize in something. So specialize in cardiology or surgery or neurology or internal medicine. And specializing involves finishing a 3-year residency that sometimes, depending on how competitive it is, requires like a specialty internship, like right after you're rotating, which surgeons, I know for a fact now, it's really common for them to do like 2 specialty internships before even being considered for a residency. So you end up literally spending years. You sometimes don't even end up where you want to be. If you went all the way through, you might be like 32 or 33 or 34 before you even end up being a specialist, and then finally starting to make money. Because, by the way, during your rotating, and well, not so much rotating out in California, but typically these types of like training programs pay really badly. So you're not making any money till you're like in your mid 30s sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much the path.
Yeah, and a couple of things that I just want to sort of point out to people listening that I think are important about that story is, one is that you sort of touched on the competitive nature of it. There's you're always like looking to be in that sort of top percentile. So in high school, you need to get into a good college. In college, you need to get into vet school, which is very competitive and requires a high GPA and a lot of like experience within the field and things like that. So you've got to have work experience, you've got to have a high GPA. And then from vet school, you can go out after only spending 8 years in school and be a general practitioner veterinarian.
Yeah.
You can be sort of what most people think of your family veterinarian that you would go to for the spays or vaccines, or you just sort of that regular routine care. And then if you want to specialize, now you're talking about an additional at least 4 more years. So you mentioned it, you're going to have a rotating internship that could be very competitive to get into. And then the residencies, each level actually gets virtually more competitive. So the pool of available spots or opportunities for people to get into gets smaller and smaller, right? There's a lot of colleges, and then there's less vet schools, and then there's even less internships. And so it's just, and then, just to give people kind of a numbers basis for this, I was at my last job, we trained residents. So we had a residency program, and we would take 1 resident at our program per year, and we would get about anywhere from 120 to 150 applications for that 1 single spot. And so it's surgery. I don't know if it's the most competitive one. I think there are more surgery slots, but there are also more people trying to do surgery. So it may be, as in terms of ratio, it might be similar to cardio. I don't know all those statistics in all the specific specialties. I don't know if for cardio kind of how many spots you had to apply to?
Yeah, I think so. There were a total of 22 available programs, I think counting Canada as well and the US, which I applied to all of them. And
Yeah.
I only got interviews for 4. 3 of them were residencies and one of them was an internship. So and I feel like I wasn't like the most competitive person, but I also had a pretty decently like beefed up application. So I don't even know. I think the numbers, it was like pretty low. I want to say like every program got probably 80 applicants and then 10 got an interview and then
Yeah.
they chose 1. So you're like 1 out of 80,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. So you in basically, again, you've got, 80 people, and probably most people are applying to almost every program. So somewhere in the range of like 80 to 90 applicants for 22 total spots. So it's it gets very competitive. And as you mentioned, in some of the specialties, surgery, I know personally, it's now commonplace for someone to have to do at least one surgical internship in between the general internship and the residency, if not 2.
Yeah.
Sometimes people do 3. So you have ultimately 8 years of college between college and vet school, and then you have at least 4 more years of specialty training. As you said, you're likely into your 30s before you're at a job that you make more than enough to live on, essentially, at that point. And in some of those internships and residencies, it's arguable whether or not you're making enough to live on. In California, they do a pretty good job of making sure that it's at least enough for people to survive on. But if you were to look at it on a per hour basis, it's probably about $4 or $5 an hour with the amount of time that people are spending in service of their residency or their internship.
Yeah.
You mentioned something about which is semi-unique, at least in my experience, but also similar. You took a gap year between college and vet school, correct? You said?
I did, yeah.
Yeah,
I as a tutor, just trying to make money.
Yeah. And I actually took 3 years gap year between college and vet school, and that's not the norm, but it happens. Like people need some time. There's for whatever reason. Sometimes it's to beef up your resume. Sometimes it's just because you need to make a little bit of money, whatever the case may be. But many people go kind of college, vet school, like sort of straight through the whole thing. And then you took a year off in between your internship and your residency. And I want to, if you don't mind, I kind of want to talk about that a little bit, because it's not typical, just so people know. It's not typical. Like, in fact,
also not
right. Like in the surgery world, we discourage that, because people will see that as, and right or wrong, sometimes people will see it as maybe a lack of commitment to whatever the specialty is if someone took time off. Now, in reality, it's probably ridiculous to look at it that way, because sometimes people need a minute. But what led you to do that? What kind of things happen? And you don't have to share anything you're uncomfortable with, but like, what was the kind of thought process behind taking that year off, and then deciding, yes, I do want to go forward this, which, again, I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, if you're not sure you want to do a residency, you probably shouldn't, because it is 3 more years of intense dedication to that specific specialty. But tell me about your journey there, and kind of how that all played out for you.
Yeah, I think during my internship, like I said, I was probably not as mentally prepared for what I was getting into until I was actually doing it. And then like, I guess all of us interns experience, but
because it's impossible to be mentally prepared for that. Going from a student to being like someone who works 60 to 80 hours a week, like as a doctor.
Like, not only the time working, but the literal amount of decisions that you make per day change so much. And like, it's not that you're a vet student and you're like going up and getting like guidelines on how to run through cases, or like, here, this is your plan, or like, here, let me give you the treatments. Like, no, this is on you. You have a license now, and any bad decision you make or any bad client interaction that you have will fall on you. So already for the first 3 months, that was draining. And I think that probably I was incredibly burnt out by the time match came along. And it's funny because you start your internship in like what, June, and then by come like September, you're supposed to know that you're like wanting to do residency because that's when match applications start, like around there. And I think by November or October, I can't remember, they close, but it's definitely before the year ends. And so that was already daunting. You have to know for sure. And I already kind of like entering it, found this weird like of ER medicine. I don't know if I'm like a little masochistic or something, but I literally was just like, I don't mind it. I think I can do it. And I had heard that honestly, like ER medicine was paying so well because after COVID, the amount of patients that we started to see was insane. And literally there was so much like need for an ER veterinarian that I was like, I could see myself doing this, and I think I would be okay. So it was either to me like ER or just like saying, you know what, screw it, let's just try for residency and see what happens, or like, apply through the match. And then eventually I think I had been at, West LA, where they already have a cardiology department and they have a residency program there, and they also have an internship program. So I had been like kind of like in touch with my mentor, and I was like, I'm kind of interested in, following through, and they were taking an intern that year. So I was like, well, perfect. If I'm interested and maybe I want to, then, it might work out. But it turned out that by the time I had decided to even look into if they were still interested in taking me as an intern, they had already spoken to like another cardiologist that had already internship trained cardiology, like doctor, that wanted to continue and do another internship at West LA. So she had 1 year of experience over me. And on top of it, I still wasn't 100% sure, to be completely honest. And so I was like, you know what? It's okay. Like, I'm just going to do a year of ER. And to be honest, at that time, I think I was fully convinced that I didn't even know that I wanted to specialize anymore. That's how burnt out I really was. And I think that maybe during the like when everybody started matching, because my intern class was super just hardcore, and they like half of them matched to residencies, like all of them that applied to residencies matched. So like of course that was a little bit sad that day that I was like, okay, well, everybody matched and I'm just here like, I'll do ER next year. But I think honestly, I don't regret that. I don't want to keep going off on tangents, because I think like looking back, I'm glad I did this ER year, but I'll just like end it there.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting to, and the match process happens in, with human medicine and things like that, but it is a a bit of a crazy thing, because especially when you're going from vet school to an internship, right? You've been in vet school for 4 years, you're kind of transitioning. It doesn't feel like, to me anyway, it didn't feel like as hard to make that decision and make that transition from vet school to internship. But when you're going to go from an internship to a residency, you're, as you described, so the timing of it is a little bit intense. You start your internship in June-ish, middle of June, sometimes early July, depending on the program. And then you basically do have to make the decision as to whether or not you're going to go into the match. And what that is essentially you're applying to all of the residency positions. And you have to make that decision by about September, maybe October. And then you have to have all your materials submitted by December. And then what happens is there's basically like a 2-month-ish waiting period after people get all their application materials in, where they hear nothing. And then there's match day. And here in California at 5 a.m. on match day, all of a sudden, everybody who matches just pops up on a computer. Like you get an email and you find out, did I match or did I not match? And if you didn't match and you were trying to, now there's a scramble to try and find any of the open slots. It's a really intense process. And it's actually, you mentioned being sort of sad because maybe it was a little bit of regret at not applying, but you're seeing all your friends and your colleagues match at that point. But the interesting thing is there's so many I think kind of raw emotions wrapped up in match day, because so if you're applying for residency and you match, you're elated about that.
Yeah.
I did that.
Yeah.
And I had friends that didn't match.
Yeah.
And it was really hard to be like super excited and
Yeah.
kind of show your enthusiasm that you matched when like your friends are crying. And
Yeah.
so it is a really a challenging day, and a lot of emotion, I think, mixed up in it, and from all sides, whether you matched or didn't match, or you're doing the scramble, like it's a bit of a challenging process. And then so that happens about in March, and then you finish out your internship and sort of move on. With that process, so you took the year off, you worked in ER, and
Yeah.
what about that made you decide, okay, I do want to do this. I'm gonna go back through this process of the match and try and get a residency?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, ER work is hard, I will say, because I went from one high volume hospital, like VCA West LA already is huge. And then I went to Access right after that, which is comparatively, like, honestly, as an ER doctor, I was probably seeing even more than what I was as an intern. Yeah, definitely, because I was faster. But it just felt like the intensity was just as bad, because it was when I was an intern and I was seeing like maybe not as many cases as a typical ER doctor would. It still felt like a lot. I was learning a lot. But then moving to Access, I was like bombarded with all these cases. And I think I was working shifts where I was working late swing. So they transitioned me over to a schedule where I was working Thursday through Saturday, 2 p.m. to 2 a.m. And that evening flux of clients, like, that would always kill me.
Yeah, some of the busiest time of the day.
Yeah. So I think that I didn't like, I honestly, like, my first few months of ER, I did enjoy it. But I think I just started having this feeling eating away at me that was saying, like, I just kept having that thought, like, I don't want to look back and think one day, like 2 years down the line, you've done ER work, you've been out of the competitive end of wanting to apply and like being a competitive, like, candidate for a cardio residency in the future, because you've done 2 years of ER now rather than just one. And you might lose that window because, like you said, it's not conventional to do a year like of ER after your rotating internship. So the more I waited on it, the more I would lose that window. And so I was running out of time. And I think that that's what really ate away a lot at me. I also had a lot of like, I don't know, like a pivotal epiphany moment throughout this year where I realized that a lot of the reason why I really wanted to stay local and I was thinking about ER would be a great option for me is because my family lives mostly around here. And my mom and dad are now in their 70s, because my mom had me when she was like in her early 40s actually. And it was really eating away at me that I might leave for a residency, be gone for X amount of time, and miss out on important events with my family, or maybe even, God forbid that I would like come back having to like deal with like a sick parent or something like that because they're old. And so I know that a lot of people I talked to a ton of my mentors and people that I would just reach out to, and I was like, can you just like, should I do this or not? And a lot of them, like one criticalist that actually I spoke to was like, I know that you're concerned, but you also have to think about that you have 40 plus years left of your career left in you probably. And if you do this just to buy some time with, your family, which I've stayed here the majority of my life in LA to be like close to them, then you might get resentful or like actually be even more bummed out in the future about that than you would about just being far away for 3 years and missing out on that. Because I could still come back anyway. So I just decided I'm just gonna go for it. Like, and I don't know what happened, but something went click, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna apply to all the residencies available. I don't even know where I end up. I just want to go. And then honestly, I don't know why it worked out the way it did, but ending up with a residency literally that is like a 5.5 hour drive from where I am now is, I don't know, something crazy happened, but I'm super thankful for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And
Yeah.
You bring up another sort of point, and this is something that I've encountered a lot with well, this happened when I applied for my own residency, but I, as someone who has advised a lot of interns like trying to move on to residency positions, you know, when I applied, I'm from Massachusetts. I didn't want to leave Massachusetts. I applied literally to one program and was extremely lucky that I got that. I had done a lot of, I mean, luck, but also like I had set the groundwork to be able to be kind of accepted into that program. But when I talk to people, that are looking into going into residency programs and things like that, I tell them apply to every single one. Apply to every single one because it increases your chances, and you rank them in order of maybe where you want to be or which ones are your favorites. But like, so many people struggle with what you just described, in that I don't want to go away from my parents. I don't want to go away from my boyfriend. I don't want to, like, my significant other has a job here. Like, they can't move. I don't want to be away from them for 3 years. Like, these are legitimate concerns, but I'll tell you, like, I have made people cry because I have said essentially what you got from that critic list is that, do you really want to give up this dream of yours because you don't want to be away from insert loved one here for 3 years? And it's a hard thing to hear. It's a hard thing to come to grips with, but also, like, walking away from that dream and that opportunity because you think that's, not you don't want to have that distance is I don't think it's an easy decision at all. I didn't apply to everything. Like, but I also, like, I know in the situation of, like, how to best increase your odds of getting the resident, because once you're at that level where you want a residency and you're applying for a residency, all that matters is getting a residency, right? There's you can rank them. All residencies are not created equal. There are some that you're going to get, maybe better training or a higher caseload or whatever it is. You may get something that you want out of the residency that might not be as available in a different residency. But the reality is, at the end of the day, if you get a residency, you can be that specialist. And so it's, if you limit it to, people, I've worked here in LA. Like, I had people like you, like, I don't want to leave LA. Well, guess what? You have, like, max maybe 3 opportunities depending on what specialty it is if you're going to stay in LA, versus, we already said, the 22 or whatever programs, if you apply to all of them, it's not like the odds are great, but they're a whole lot greater than if you're only applying to 2 or 3 locally. So and I only harp on this only to kind of segue into what I want to talk about next, is that the challenges faced in the veterinary community. And people don't know this. Most people don't know this, but veterinarians are one of the highest suicide rates in, like, career wise of all careers. And the statistics, I was just looking the other day to sort of see if there was anything new, but the most recent statistics say that veterinarians are male veterinarians are about 2 times more likely than the general public to commit suicide, and female veterinarians are about 3.5 times more likely to commit suicide than the general public. And I have recently, and we can talk about this if we want, but I have recently, as I mentioned, I am starting a fund that is going to have a impact component to it to help combat this problem. But when I have talked to people about the fund, people that are not in the veterinary community, and I say veterinarians have one of the highest suicide rates of all career paths, like, literally every one of them just looks dumbfounded and is like, why? Like, I don't get it. But I bet you can tell them why. I bet that's not a surprise to you to know that. You probably already know the statistic, but, like, I feel sure any veterinarian can tell them why. And I don't like, I don't have suicidal tendencies. I never have. I haven't had those thoughts, but I know people that have. I know people that have committed suicide. In one of my very close mentors did, and it's a real problem. And it doesn't surprise me, I guess, being in the profession. What are your thoughts there? And we can kind of go back and forth on this, but does it surprise you? Did you know that?
No, I did know that. I know we have a like larger percentage than other careers. I was looking into, I think that, and I'm not sure the number, I wish I did, but I was looking in just like into the healthcare profession as a whole, because even just like human doctors have kind of a higher rate of suicide than the general population and other jobs.
Especially since COVID.
Yeah.
The human medical profession, those numbers jumped up quite a bit through COVID, which again, understandably so, they were frontline, and what was quite terrible.
I have not like an exact answer, but I do have like theories. I think that obviously working in the hospital that I did for this year, I learned of like the stressors of big things like trying to deal with clients that are angry because they don't have the funds to take care of their animal, or like to cover the bills that they need to stabilize like a very unstable pet. And then them having the blame placed on you as a veterinarian for that issue being an issue. I think that sometimes people aren't well prepared for how much it's going to be, like it's going to take like financially to take care of your pet, especially if an emergency does happen or a surgery needs to come up. Like veterinary prices in general have skyrocketed. I think, like, I haven't been in this career for a super long time, but I think that it's very expensive, especially working at a large specialty and referral hospital, to take care of a pet with like quality medicine. That literally since COVID, I do think that I'm pretty sure a lot of people just went out and adopted a ton of pets, like because
the number of pets in the US doubled during COVID.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, like, if you can imagine, that literally put a strain on our profession, because there's not enough veterinarians to take care of all these pets that people have. And so things are coming through the door. We're literally in the aspect of ER, we're needing a triage. I'm going to take an unstable hit by car over maybe like a cat that's fractured its leg at home. And unfortunately, one is more unstable than the other. And it's not because we're neglecting our patients that we don't want to see it. We literally just don't have time. Sometimes we don't even have the resources. Like in my hospital, we several times have dogs coming in for heart failure, and we run out of oxygen cages. We're then having to transfer these patients to other hospitals. So just the amount of work we have to do is insane. And then just from the other side, I think that, like you said, there's a huge misunderstanding of what we do as a profession, like as doctors, as veterinarians. And sometimes people don't equate what human medical doctors do to what a veterinarian does, but it's probably almost exactly the same, because we're just treating something with fur, but they all have the same organs. They generally have the same issues, and they're just as complicated. So it's like, I don't know. I just think it's a combination of effects, and people come in and they have high expectations. They have little funds, and then they expect you to diagnose something off of just a physical exam, and you have to explain to them that that's not how it works. You have to put in a ton of money for these diagnostics. There's frustration. A lot of the stuff that I've seen also, like, clients leave sometimes some very terrible reviews on Yelp or something that really hit veterinarians, because honestly, probably the majority of us, the reason why we chose this profession is because we love animals and we want to help animals. And the fact that, like, we are now acting as middlemen and talking about finances. We're acting as counseling services. Like, when people come in and having to like comfort people, it's a lot more on our plate than I think that we were all initially prepared for. And that takes a toll on you, like, every day.
Yeah. And I think you hit on many of the issues, but I think you're 100% right. It's not one thing. It's all of these things. It's the the financial pressures from the clients that want you to treat their pets for little to no money because that's what they have. You have the like I said, the number of pets have doubled in the US, while the number of veterinarians and the number of technical staff has gone down. So you have an already overworked population or profession being essentially inundated with even more work. You mentioned that we do the same thing as, the human medical side, and that's 100% true from a medical standpoint. We do virtually everything that medical doctors, and we're expected to do it at about a tenth of the cost. But here's one thing that they don't do that we have to do. They don't do euthanasias. And that is, as you said, every veterinarian I know went into this because they love animals and they want to help them. They want to fix them. They want to save them. Nobody did this because they thought they were going to make a ton of money. Nobody did this because they wanted to perform convenience euthanasias for people. That's not what the reason behind becoming a veterinarian is. And it's hard to, I think, kind of like as an outsider, probably to recognize all of those different things that are going on. And even in our patients that, like, probably at that, sometimes I think being able to perform euthanasia is actually a service, like a blessing that we get to provide, because they've gotten to a point where they're no longer savable. But oftentimes we've put a ton of effort into trying to save them by the time we get to that point. And so have the owners, those owners that there's many wonderful owners that commit completely to their pets. But the reality is it's a loss to that veterinarian. In a lot of ways, not as much as the owner, but in a lot of ways we get very emotionally attached to them. So, bring all that together. You already mentioned that, you don't really make any money until you kind of get out of all of the specialty, all of the training programs. And if you didn't do an internship, you're going to have a much lower salary starting as a regular veterinarian than you would have if you had done an internship or became a specialist. And then you add on the student loans. I don't know if you have student loans.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So do you mind sharing how much student loans you have?
I honestly haven't checked as of recently, but I think and they've put a pause on like interest accumulation back because of all this stuff, but COVID. But I think the number is like somewhere around $250,000 of student loans that I go back.
Yeah.
So
And I know people with, I mean, that's a huge number. It's crazy, but I know people with even more than that. I personally feel that I got lucky because I got out with $160,000 of school loans. And for whatever reason, at the time I finished vet school, I was able to consolidate my loans at 1.75%. I don't know what happened at that. I didn't know enough about finances at that point to know why that happened. I couldn't explain it to you, but it was kind of awesome that it did, because for me, I was able to amortize it over 30 years. So for me, there's no incentive to pay it off sooner. But I know a lot of people in your shoes, a lot of like younger veterinarians that have 200, 300. I've heard of like couples that are over $500,000 in, vets that married other vets that are over $500,000 in student debt, and their interest rates are 5, 6, 7, maybe even higher in terms of percentage. I mean, like basically you enter your career with a mortgage payment that doesn't get you a house. Like most people, their biggest expense is their housing payment. And, essentially young veterinarians are, so my point being, all of this comes together to create a multitude of, stressors from different angles. And so when people say that the suicide rate in veterinarians is high, I don't have any reason to doubt that or question it. I don't have to ask why. I know why. I also have 2 small children, and I tell them they can be anything they want in the world, but secretly, I hope they are not a veterinarian. I literally do not want my kids to follow in my footsteps. Like, I
Yeah.
don't, I'm a vet, my wife's a tech. I do not want my kids to follow it. Like, I keep them away from it. I don't want them to see I don't want them to get interested in it. Like, it's
Yeah.
crazy because I see the toll that it takes on, especially the young veterinarians at this point, and it's hard to watch. Like I
Yeah.
love doing surgery. I love what I do. I have helped a lot of animals, and I love that. But I don't know. Sometimes, some days I'm like, this is not worth it. And I see it, and part, in a lot of ways, because I see it in the residents I train. I see it in, the interns that I've worked with. I see it, I met you as a student. Like, I see it in their faces, this like almost like unfathomable level of pressure and stress at the beginning of a career. And it's like, and it's hard to think like I would point my kids in that direction. So it's a problem, and it's a worse problem now that COVID sort of increased those numbers, and there's a lot of people that have left the profession, especially on the technical side, like the staff that we need to do our jobs. So it's look, I don't, like, follow your dreams. I don't want to discourage anyone from, if they want to be a vet, but recognize, what you're up against. And mostly I wanted to talk about this because I don't think people know. I
No,
don't think the general public knows this. And I have to hope that those clients that are coming in, I understand that they are stressed because their pet is in distress, but those clients that are coming in and being belligerent and, degrading these emergency veterinarians and things like that, like I'm an old man, I've been doing this a while. Like, you can say what you want, I don't care, but I see how it hurts some of these, younger doctors that are starting out and really just trying to help. And it's it's really tough. And I want people to know that is a very real issue, and that what they say to their veterinarian may truly have an impact beyond what you're thinking about in that moment. So we know, so you're gonna come, you're gonna start in a cardiology residency. That'll be, I assume, in July, June, July, something like that.
Endish of July.
And then you'll have 3 years there, and then you'll kind of sail off into the sunset as a famous cardiologist. But
As they
right, it's exactly what happens. No, but I'm very happy for you, and again, congratulations on sort of achieving that milestone.
so much.
I want to ask you the questions that I ask every guest. It's not most of the guests I have on here are real estate related, so I'm going to tailor these a little bit to the veterinary world, and we'll see where it goes. But the first one is I always ask everyone, because the name of the podcast is Know Your Why, and so I always ask people, what is your why? And oftentimes, if to give you context, the idea is like, what is the thing that keeps pushing you towards the level of success that we just talked about, all the different roadblocks and steps you had to get through to kind of get where you're at now. What keeps you going? Like, what keeps you excited about the future?
I think several things. I couldn't really pinpoint one thing, and it's been like a constantly dynamic sort of changing situation. But in the beginning, the reason why I started all this is truly because I love animals, and like I love working with them. Then eventually, like, of course, my family, like I'm always thinking about my future with my family and how I'll be able to help them in the future too. So like, obviously financial stability is really important to me, so I can take care of them too. And I think like probably when I peeked my head out of the internship coma that I came out of, I realized that I do really want to do something that, like, the way I feel fulfilled is like helping probably others with maybe like sharing my experiences and stuff. And like recently, I think, well, not recently, for a while, I fell out of, for example, like I have an Instagram page. I used to post a lot more to like try to raise awareness about our field, but also like share with vet students the path of like how you get to certain places. And I fell out of that. And I think that it was also because honestly, I was kind of depressed during internship and I just didn't want to think about anything else except doing my job and getting through it. But now I feel like I want to do that again. So like my why has become recently that I want to contribute something, because at the end of the day, like no matter what you do, and what you collect, the stuff that really what's left of you afterwards is like what you emanated to other people around you, like the lessons learned and stuff. So hopefully that is going to keep me going.
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think, and I think that I completely believe that you can have that impact. I think you have a unique perspective and have the ability to sort of share that story in a relatable way. So I think that'll be awesome.
Thank you.
Second question for you. This one I don't have to change. Tell us something about yourself that isn't common knowledge, a special skill, a hobby. What are you comfortable sharing? A little insider information.
Special skill. I feel like honestly, because I was gonna say something like kickboxing, but I only did that for 2 years. And I think my special skill is that throughout this entire time where we've been hyper fixated on like getting through my career or like, we as vets, I mean, that we have to work so hard in like doing everything and putting in so many hours in our job. I still tried to like maintain being active. I think that that's probably what kept me sane throughout a lot of my um, time as an intern and as a vet student. And that's what I try to like share with people is like, no matter what, if you can find a way to exercise, whether that be like a stroll around your neighborhood once a day for like 20 minutes, I think that that makes like an immense difference in your mental health. So I've always found a way to do it. I'm the type of person that needs to stay active to stay like just like mentally okay. And I think I asked you when I was a vet student, we were like in the middle of a surgery. I was like, how did you do it? Like, how did you stay active throughout your internship or something? And you told me that you'll find a way to do it if like that's your priority. And I think that that really resonated with me. And I was like, as long as I prioritize being like physically active and healthy, I think I'll find a way to do it. And I did. And I think it's helped me immensely. And I think everyone should do it.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, we did have that conversation. And it's funny because, and I believe this holds true for both of us, but for me, like I love to exercise anyway. I've always done it like really literally my whole life, but it makes me feel better from a mental health standpoint.
Yeah.
As much as it is like a physical benefit. It's just that the I don't know, my head's clearer, I sleep better, like getting in some level of exercise. And like you said, like you don't have to do like 2 hours of cardio. It's like literally like go for a walk, take a dog for a walk, like whatever, just get out there and be in and like it makes such a huge difference in how you're going to feel overall, how you're going to feel about yourself. Like I do think it makes a tremendous amount of impact in like just the way that you, I don't know, even just view the world.
For sure. Yes.
When people hear this and if they would like to reach out to you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
So I have this Instagram account. My handle is Mery, MERY.vetmed. And it's spelled Mary because I originally spoke Spanish. And if you spell it Mary in Spanish, it's like body. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. So when they asked me when I was 4 years old how I want to spell my name, I said Mery. So that's why. So that's how you can reach out to me.
There you go. You got to pick how you spelled your own name. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and they didn't correct, which is the funny part.
Yeah.
So like,
that's pretty good. That's parents with I guess open open boundaries there, I suppose, which is
let me
awesome.
make my mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's unique, so people can, and
yeah,
they should be able to find you. But we'll also put it in the show notes so that they have that.
Awesome.
final question for you. And so generally what I ask is, again, because it's typically we're talking about real estate, but most of the time I talk about, or I ask, what piece of advice would you give to someone who is getting started in real estate? I want to leave this open for you, Mery, about like, you can take it in sort of the veterinary medicine way, or if you just want to give us some parting words of your like wisdom, your approach to mental health. I know you mentioned exercise, things like that, but I do think to me a lot of this conversation, we talked about all the different components that may be semi-damaging to people's mental health within our profession, but like, what can they do? What other things can they do to help there?
Do you mean people outside of our community to help our community, or like people within the community? How can they?
I would say we can start with people within our community to help themselves, right? Because you've got to start. You got to start at home. I think you got to look inward first. So we talked about sort of the exercise and being active. What other things do you think people, young veterinarians, that they can do to help balance all the different stressors and pressures of this career path?
Honestly, I think what helped me the most, and especially I'm thinking of like my internship year, which it was like the toughest year of my life, having like a network of friends or family to just vent to, and literally just it sounds like a lot when you're going through a lot of like depression and anxiety, and it's even just like reaching out to someone is a big feat. But I think just literally reaching out, saying, hey, I don't feel okay right now, can you just be there for me, is huge, because then that person knows. And it really shows a lot of strength that you could do that. Hopefully you pick the right person, so that's why you should always like reach out to hopefully like a small network of people that you really trust. But even if not that, there's the Not One More Vet community is also like present on Facebook, on Instagram. There's ways that you can post and share your stories, or even just get in touch with someone that might connect you to people that could help you, or reaching out to a therapist, but reaching out to other people in general, because if you sit through it alone, it's probably the most difficult way that you could get through it.
Yeah. I think you need to find mentors, find colleagues, find friends, family, whatever it is, people to have in that support system and help you kind of balance those pressures. It's probably helpful to talk to people that have been through it kind of ahead of you,
Exactly.
have gone through the same situations. It's like you mentioned, you asked me how I stayed active, and I prioritized it. It was like, this is something I can't live without. So I think that's a great piece of advice, and having people around you that can kind of help you when things do get hard, and this sort of goes to, I guess, anything in life, but it is important to have that support system available to you. So listen, this was awesome. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. I really appreciate kind of all that you shared. I actually would love to sort of continue this conversation, this topic, because I think it's an important one. So we'll either get you back on, or we'll do some, I don't know, do some Instagram lives or something like that. We'll do something to keep it going. Great. But thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Really, I had a lot of fun. Thank you.
Awesome. And folks listening, I know, especially those in the veterinary community, you're really going to love this episode. Please like, rate, and review. Helps us get great guests on, like Dr. Wang. And I do intend to have more veterinarians come on and sort of share their experiences within the field. So again, thank you so much.
I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Balara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you.